why the Americans are very interested in Syria is to extend the Qatari gas pipelines to Europe. Now, this was a project before the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines, but they wanted, by supplying or extending these gas pipelines from Qatar to Turkey, for Turkey to become the distributor for the Qatari gas to Europe. And if they manage to do that, Europe will no longer need the Russian gas. But when this project failed, because President Assad survived for now 14 years of war, and he vetoed these gas pipelines, the Americans went and they destroyed the Nord Stream pipelines in the seas.
Secret cables and reports by the US, Saudi and Israeli intelligence agencies indicate that the moment Assad rejected the Qatari pipeline, military and intelligence planners quickly arrived at the consensus that fomenting a Sunni uprising in Syria to overthrow the uncooperative Bashar Assad. In 2009, according to WikiLeaks, soon after Bashar Assad rejected the Qatar pipeline, the CIA began funding opposition groups in Syria. It is important to note that this was well before the Arab Spring uprising against Assad.
Early 2014 email from Hillary Clinton, so not so long after she left Secretary of State, to her campaign manager, John Podesta. That email, it states that ISIS is funded by Saudi Arabia and Qatar. The governments of Saudi Arabia and Qatar.
Hillary Clinton from August of 2014 claiming two U.S. allies, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, were funding and supporting ISIS. Quote, saying in part to an email to President Obama's then counsel, John Podesta, we need to use our diplomatic and more traditional intelligence assets to bring pressure on the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which are providing clandestine financial and logistic support to ISIL and other radical Sunni groups in the region, end quote.
President Obama, he is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS, okay? He's the founder. He founded ISIS. And I would say the co-founder would be crooked Hillary Clinton.
As I've said before, this aspect of our strategy was moving too slowly, but the fall of Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province.
that this notorious terrorist jihadist group called ISIL or ISIS is created largely with money from the very people who are giving money to the Clinton Foundation. Yes. That's extraordinary.
Мы же понимаем, почему в Сирии война. Если мы там не будем подавлять оппозицию Башару Асаду, завтра вся арабская нефть и газ придут в Европу, у нас ничего покупать не будут.
Если бы Россия не вошла туда и не удержала режим Башара Асада, то уже сегодня бы стоял очень остро вопрос выживания российского бюджета.
This is the third occasion since World War II that the Soviet Union has moved militarily to assert control over one of its neighbors.
National Security Advisor Brzezinski flew to Pakistan to set about rallying resistance. He wanted to arm the Mujahideen without revealing America's role.
The people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago. And we did it because we were locked in this struggle with the Soviet Union. They invaded Afghanistan, and we did not want to see them control Central Asia, and we went to work.
In Syria, we're breaking the trials, the attempts of arming Lebanon from Iran and Hezbollah. Assad needs to know that he's playing with fire.
Şu an itibariyle tabii İdlib, Hama ve Humus, hedef tabii Şam. Muhaliflerin bu yürüyüşü şu an itibariyle devam ediyor. Biz de bunu gerek istihbarat gerekse bütün medyadan takibini yapıyoruz. Tabii temennimiz kazasız belasız bir şekilde Suriye'deki bu yürüyüş devam etsin diyeceğim.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
opposition forces announced they'd entered the Syrian capital. And we're hearing reports they're not facing resistance, as our guest was just saying there. And
the army has launched nearly 500 strikes since Sunday, many on the capital, Damascus. Others hit 2 naval facilities where 15 vessels were docked. Israel says it has destroyed 80% of Syria's military capabilities, including buildings linked to chemical weapons. Israeli ground forces are also moving deeper into the Golan Heights, effectively expanding Israel's occupation.
The slaughter of the Kurds being done by Turkey is yet another negative consequence of the regime change war that we've been waging in Syria. But so do many of the politicians in our country from both parties who have supported this ongoing regime change war in Syria that started in 2011, along with many in the mainstream media who have been championing and cheerleading this regime change war. As president, I will end these regime change wars, and I would make sure that we stop supporting terrorists like Al-Qaeda in Syria.
There is no doubt that the so-called rebel forces attacking the government in Syria are creatures of the United States and of Israel. Israel has provided medical and other support facilities to them perfectly openly. The United States yesterday was attacking from the air forces coming from Iraq to try to help the government of Syria. So there's no doubt whatsoever that the rebels are backed by the CIA and backed by Israel. And that's what's happening here. It's an attempt by the Americans and the Israelis, aided by the Turks, to overthrow the regime in Damascus in order to block assistance flowing through Syria to Lebanon.
Al-Qaeda has now taken over Syria. If you told an American on September 12, 2001, that 23 years later, the Western media would be celebrating Al-Qaeda, they wouldn't believe you. HTS is led by Mohammed Abu al-Julani. He was a former member of ISIS, which was then called Al-Qaeda in Iraq. He actually was sent by the leader of ISIS, Baghdadi, to Syria to start the Al-Qaeda affiliate there, which was called Al-Nusra. You can rebrand Al-Qaeda, who they spent years saying was the biggest enemy of the West during the war on terror. If they can now rebrand them as our friends, then they can do anything.
This happened because of us. These 600,000 are not just incidental. We started a war to overthrow a regime. It was covert. It was Timber Sycamore. People can look it up, the CIA operation, together with Saudi Arabia.